The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey, coming to you cordless, everybody. Greetings from Minneapolis. It's Monday. No, it's Thursday. It's Thursday night. What the hell? Seriously, could I do this? You know, I used to be really, really slick at this. Nope, not anymore. It's Thursday night, November 13th. I'll look. 2025. It's 9:01 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States, 6:01 p.m. on the West Coast. And here where I'm sitting in Northeast Minneapolis, it's 8:01 p.m. I am Jim Peters, and welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. We are live. Yes, we do this live. I know. Well, okay, we got pre-recorded segments. We do. Yeah, but we do this live. Monday through Thursday nights. Yeah, and we're finally getting our crap together. We have the rest of next week all booked out now. I mean, it's really terrible, you know. So this show runs on 1.5 people, and I got sick about a month ago for 10 days, and then Kimberly, our booker, she also got sick for about a week. So, and we've been messed up for a month. It's awful, but we're finally back on track. We are back on the saddle, back on the horse, and riding it to glory. So tonight, our guest is James Bradley. You might know him as the author of the book Flag of Our Fathers, which was made into a movie by Clint Eastwood. But he's written 3 books since then, actually now 4, which came out on Tuesday. Book called Precious Freedom came out 2 days ago. It's his first novel, and we're talking to him. We taped this afternoon for damn good reason. He's in the middle of the Indian Ocean. so that, believe it or not, the intertube actually does work. It actually works. Connection actually held for like a good 45, 50 minutes. So glad to hear that. He's in Mauritius. It's a tiny little island country off the east coast of Africa. Only major city there is called Port Louis. And actually, he's not in that. I can't remember. Then it was at Golden Bay, I think, the name of the city he's in. But at any rate, this is a fascinating conversation. Seriously, stick around and listen to this, because Bradley, he writes books on military history. It's like I said, this is a novel, and he explains why this one's a novel and the others weren't. And he went to Vietnam and lived there for 10 years to write this book. And the stuff he discovered, and also the stuff he will reveal to you without having to read that book, but you should anyway. You should buy it, because he's a fantastic author. Of his 4 previous books, 3 of them were #1 New York Times bestsellers. And so, and our hats off to Kimberly for booking this guy. I mean, we do kind of have it going on here. Now, after the interview, our old friend and regular caller Think is going to be calling in from upstate New York, because he is actually Vietnamese, and he lived there during the war, and he's going to talk about his reaction to what Mr. Bradley said. He's not heard this yet until we're broadcasting it right now. So we're going to talk to him a little bit afterwards. And that's our show. We got a big bang up show. Now, next week, we have a big bunch of bang up shows too. On Monday, I want to make sure I get the dates right here. Excuse me. I got a little outline. I write a little outline. Yeah, it's really cute. I don't use the little heart dots on the eyes, though. I don't do that. On Monday, Don Zoro's joining us. That's the 17th, Monday the 17th. Our old friend Don Zoro, intelligence operative, and he wrote me today. He texted me to confirm his appearance, and he said, "Yeah, it's too bad there's nothing to talk about." He's being sarcastic. He is. We got a great show on Tuesday. Not that Don isn't great, and Don is, because you guys love him. I know that because people watch. We get comments. Don is a pistol. Oh, the other thing we're going to do on Monday night too. We're going to a big show. The Gymcast is going to almost be entirely devoted to AI because, and also I need to backtrack here for a second. Speaking of that, so we scheduled off this week, Tuesday and Wednesday. We did a show on Monday night with Edward Bartlett. He's the founder of the SAVE organization. And we did an extended Gymcast because, especially on Mondays over the weekend, people said there's no news. That's BS. You have to look for it. And especially because we take Fridays off. So it's a whole 3-day weekend or 4 days worth of content. But that show, which we did live on Monday night, did not get transmitted out. We found out later on Tuesday, we found out that no one watched it because it showed up nowhere. But thankfully, we had a recording of it. So we played it. I redid the introduction and we played the show over again last night. We sent it out last night, and I know it did work. I checked. So, and I'm bringing that up because, we're going to, on Monday, after Don Zoro's done, we're going to do a whole Gymcast on AI because I've been just collecting stuff all over the place. It's just too much news. So we got that on Monday. Tuesday, we got 2 guests on Tuesday, a double show, double I call it, because I'm slick in Spanish like that, Michael Harrison, our old friend Michael Harrison, is here. The first time he's been back on the show in about a year. He's the talk radio legend and the founder of Talkers Magazine, which is the Bible of talk media in the United States, and still its publisher. So great. And the other thing he is, which is the reason it's coming on, is he is also one of the singers for the band Gun Hill Road. And I don't know if any of you remember this, but that band goes back 50 years to the 1970s. It was one of what they called a psychedelic rock band back then. And they're still playing. And the amazing thing is now Michael has found a niche for them, especially kind of coincides with his own niche. And that is it's hard to, I will just be blunt about this. They do bumper music for talk radio networks and talk radio radio shows. And the songs are getting huge plays because they're issue oriented, and their new song is called "Close My Ears," and it's about the bias and partisanship in talk media. And they have a very fantastic video for it, which Michael's son Matthew Harrison does for them. He does their music videos, and so we're going to play the video and talk to Michael. We haven't talked to him for a while, so I'll be interested to hear his thoughts on a whole bunch of stuff. And also on Tuesday, author Jarrett Knott will be joining us. He's written a series of books, well, 2 so far, but I guess more are coming, called Tiny Blunders, Big Disasters. And I wanted to book this guy. This was not a pitch. I bought this book a couple of years ago and I loved it. The first one. I absolutely loved it. It is about, the whole thing's about tiny little mistakes people made in history that ended up being huge, huge factors, like starting wars. One of my favorites is the guy is the Watergate burglars. The reason they got caught is because of a piece of tape they put over a door, which they weren't supposed to do. And if they hadn't have done that, they probably wouldn't have gone away. And we would never be talking about this. Anyway, Jared Knott's coming on Tuesday. On Wednesday, Marcus Louth from the UK, UFO researcher and reporter, about he writes for a zillion publications. He's the editor of UFO Insights, and I know he writes for Mysterious Universe, and I think The Debrief, if I'm correct. He writes for all sorts of UFO-based publications. We're going to talk to him about the latest in UFO news. That's a big thing with me. You know that if you watch the show. And Thursday, our old friend Tim Conaway's back, former executive editor of Hustler magazine. And he always has stories, and he was on my birthday show without a shirt on. And we're old farts, and I don't know if anyone wants to see that. So our last show before Thanksgiving will be Monday the 24th. That's a week from this coming Monday, and I don't know who's going to be on yet. But I scheduled that show because we've taken too many shows off. So we're going to do that show on Monday, and then the rest of that week for Thanksgiving week we're going to have off, and that's the end of November, and then we're into December, and Santa will come, and that he will show up. I've had him on before, so we'll have a matter of fact. I'm thinking about even asking him to come on that Monday. I don't know. We'll see. So tonight, James Bradley, and think afterwards. And here's James Bradley in 26 seconds. Joining us from his home office in Grand Bay, Mauritius, on the other side of the world, in the middle of the Indian Ocean, author James Bradley. James, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Good to be here, Jim.
Why are you living in Mauritius?
I have been living on islands for decades. Jamaica, Fire Island. I wrote a book from Con Dao Island in Vietnam. I lived in Hawaii, New Zealand, Taiwan. I lived on the islands between Taiwan and China. So I've been living on islands, and I covered the Pacific in 5 books, and then now we're going to the Indo-Pacific, and I'm in the Indo-Pacific.
Yeah. And are you generally moving to the places you're writing about, more or less, or?
Yeah, I like I say, I did 30 years in the Pacific. I went to school in Japan, and then my 5 books have been about the Pacific Rim. Everything from Teddy Roosevelt in the Philippines to Franklin Roosevelt in Pearl Harbor, and my dad. I think people know me from Flags of Our Fathers.
Yeah.
I wrote about my father in Flags of Our Fathers. Clint Eastwood and Steven Spielberg did the movie. And so, I don't know if you really look at Iwo Jima, it was a Pacific island. So I've been doing Pacific Islands for 5 books.
And yet you're from Antigo, Wisconsin, right?
I am from Antigo, Wisconsin, but I grew up on Bass Lake. And I grew up looking at a lake and camping on an island. So my dream when Flipper came on as a show, it was like, wow, Florida's year-round Bass Lake.
Uh-huh.
So that was my dream, was to live in a swimsuit year-round, and now I'm living my dream. Grand Bay right here, Mauritius, is the size of Bass Lake, Wisconsin. So I haven't really gotten too far in life, Jim.
Yeah, well, we're in Minneapolis, and I go through Antigo regularly to go on vacation. So you know how it is. Like out here, it's like quote unquote up north. So we do that sort of thing.
Well, I always felt sorry for people from Minnesota. So close to God's country, but not really part of it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So your father, matter of fact, I'm going to put it up on the screen here. I actually queued it up. Your father, for many years, was thought to be part of this very famous picture that was used to make the war memorial in Washington, D.C. of the raising of the flag on Iwo Jima. Now, I'm actually a little confused about this. Did it turn out that he's actually not in the picture? I know he was involved somehow, but I don't, does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter. My dad never said he was in the picture. He was injured. Uh-huh. And the guys who went back to Washington said that John Bradley, my dad, Doc Bradley, was in the picture. And the reason they did, we now know, is because the rope that held the flag to the pole was my dad's rope. My dad was a corpsman, so he had rope to lower the injured guys down. So my dad was all over the pole just before they put it up. And when they snapped it, he wasn't in the photo, but everybody said he was.
Yeah.
Then and the Marine Corps covered it up. The Marine Corps had proof that my dad was in the first flag raising, and that it was my dad's rope in the second. And the Marine Corps covered this up and didn't tell the truth until they got found out after my dad died. But if you look at the monument, if you look at President Trump in the White House, he's got the flag raising monument behind him, a model. Well, if you look at the tallest guy on there, that is my dad. My dad posed for that. So the body of the guy in the monument, the acne on his face, that's John Bradley on that monument, the world's tallest bronze monument.
So did they cover it up because they wanted a good story? Nothing more?
It's a complicated story, Jim. If you got 20 minutes, but to just shorten it, what happened is the photo appeared and Roosevelt said this will be the symbol for our bond raising tour. They raised 50% of the United States budget on that bond tour, a fantastic sum. And the Marines identified the guys wrong, but once they did it, they had to stick with it because they had told the president and told the press.
Right.
So they told Ira Hayes to shut up when he identified somebody else. And he, there's a long story, and part of it is told in the movie and my book. It's too long of a story to get into, but the Marines basically were like, this is what we told the president, everybody shut up, and they froze in place.
Yeah.
And then, they thought this would all be forgotten. It was just a photo. They'll go on a bond tour, but it has gone on to become the #1 most reproduced photo in history. If you go to Kenya, the national monument in Kenya is 6 Africans raising the flag. This is a model for everything. But my latest book, Precious Freedom, comes off of that. See, my dad fought with the Marines on Iwo Jima, and then my son, my brother Steve, in 1967 went into the Marines. Well, my dad's Marines won on Iwo Jima. My brother's Marines lost in Vietnam. And I never knew why. And the narrative in America is, well, we could have won if only. If only the press, or if only LBJ, or if only So I went to Vietnam, and I said, I caddied for Vince Lombardi. And with Vince Lombardi, it was win or lose.
Yeah.
We always beat Minnesota. We didn't have to worry about that.
Right.
But it was win or lose. So I go to Vietnam, and I said, you guys won. How did you win? So that's the core of this book, Precious Freedom. Jim, I'm the only author who's in 50 years who went to Vietnam and asked the winners, how did you win?
Well, all right. So without giving away too much of the book or anything, what's the short answer to that? How did they win?
The narrative is that we lost. We could have won, but we screwed it up. No. We didn't win one day of that war. That's a myth. What we said is, body count. We killed 200 of them and only 50 of us died. We won. No. Ho Chi Minh told his people, they're going to kill 10 times more of us than we kill of them, but they're going to lose. Ho Chi Minh said it might last 20 years. See, they beat the Mongols, they beat the Chinese, they beat the Japanese, they beat the French, and then the Americans came in. And it was just like they were the Green Bay Packers of military. The #1 winningest general of the 20th century. Ask an American. MacArthur, Eisenhower. No, it's a Vietnamese general, General Giap. They had a strategy called People's War, and they knew how to beat the invader, 100%. America had no chance. And it wasn't the quality of our fighting men. Our veterans got blamed. Oh, you guys didn't win. No. The Vietnamese admire the American fighting man. They really have empathy for him. But they say the United States government put him in a bad position. There was no way America could win in Vietnam.
I was just about to ask you about that. Was it a political screw up? Is that basically what it was? I mean, we didn't have the political will to do it?
No, see, that's the narrative that we could have won. No, we could have nuked them. We could have had political will. We could have doubled the troop strength. We could have doubled the helicopters. and Vietnam would have won. We didn't lose. See, this is like the Ice Bowl with Vince Lombardi and the Dallas Cowboys. We don't write books about how the Dallas Cowboys lost.
Yeah, right.
We don't say, well, the Dallas Cowboys. We say Vince won that game. Bart Starr lived 3 doors down from me at Bass Lake. He won the Ice Bowl. Well, Ho Chi Minh won the war. They had a plan, Jim. And we went in, little Asians with sandals, and we got aircraft carriers, high tech. And Ho Chi Minh, for example, Jim, if you do what I did and read about 250 books on the Vietnam War written by Americans, almost everyone has a helicopter on the cover. That was the sign of strength in Vietnam. The helicopter was the classic thing, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, I went to Vietnam, and the Vietnamese said, "Oh, Mr. Bradley, thank God for the helicopter." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Our skies were empty. And then a plane would come and drop a bomb to create a landing zone." So like we were 14, 15 years old. We had old rifles. And America conveniently showed us where the helicopter was going to land. And then a couple hours later, thoop, 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 the sky's empty. These are farm kids with sandals. They can see the helicopter coming. They know where it's going to land. So I asked my brother. My brother got trained Camp Pendleton, Okinawa, Da Nang, Dong Ha. What happened to you, Steve? I never knew. And he told me, and this is classic. He got trained, one of the best Marines in the world. He got on a helicopter for the first time. The helicopter landed. They opened the door. He stepped out and he got shot right near the heart. Probably a 13-year-old got my brother because we were showing them where we were going to be. Jim, the arts of war are secrecy. Stay small. Yeah. Like if I attacked your village or town when you were 14, you'd have slingshots and you knew the alleys and you know what I mean?
Right.
Well, the Americans only moved in bunches. Well, if you see 30 guys walking this way, you know where they're going. But the Vietnamese never bunched up. So the remarkable thing about this book, Precious Freedom, is that it shows that in 1969, the Marines were kicked out of northern Vietnam by civilians, not by the Vietnamese military, by little girls and boys in sandals with little hats. Farm kids kicked the United States Marines out.
Well, so
that's, Oliver Stone says on the back of this book, and he's a veteran of Vietnam, by the way. Oliver Stone says, if we knew back in 1969 what James Bradley reveals happened in 1969, American mothers would have never let their kids go to Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah. Were we just arrogant bastards because we had all this technology and we had the helicopters? Is that, and also, how come, the war went on for years. We never figured this out.
The war is very profitable. The Bell Helicopter Company was going broke. Who's buying helicopters in 1964? All of a sudden, there's Vietnam.
Right.
And guess what? Lady Bird Johnson had major stock in the Bell Helicopter Company. Lockheed. You ever hear of Lockheed?
Of course.
Just look at their stock with the Vietnam War. The Vietnam, everyone, it's a tragedy. It was a tragedy, but it was a profit center.
Yeah. So, James, my real question is, this is your 5th book, but it's your first novel. Why did you decide to do something in fiction? Because
this is really history as fiction. It's really nonfiction, but I had stories from here and there, and Vietnam's a long country. And Iwo Jima's small, right? Everybody just went boom, boom, boom for 1 month.
Right.
Well, in Vietnam, it was a 30-year war. It started with Truman.
Yeah.
So I had to just take some characters and put them together. But if you read the book, it's really nonfiction. Everything that the characters do in this book came from interviews. I spent 10 years not researching, but in Vietnam. I spent almost 15 years on the book, but I spent 10 years. I lived next to the biggest prison in Vietnam, the American prison. Just 2 months ago, I asked a guy from the New York Times who covered Vietnam during that time about the prison. And where is that? He never heard of it. The largest prison, we were torturing hundreds of political dissidents, America was, and the New York Times still hasn't heard about it. So the cover up on this war is amazing. And you'll see what was revealed in Precious Freedom.
So if you don't mind asking about the economics, the personal economics of how this works, you up to this point, you've been very successful and your books have been bestsellers. I assume you made a good deal of money. When you moved to Vietnam and decided I'm going to write a book about this, do you have to figure out how long you're going to be there? Do you have to figure out whether the book flops? I mean, do you think of any of this stuff or do you just think about the mission of writing it?
I hitchhiked around the world when I was 21 years old. I had been in 21 countries by the time I was 21, and I self-funded it. I was the #1 pots and pans summer salesman, you know? And the big thing is, see, your listener thinks, oh, that would be expensive to live in Vietnam. Well, my answer is, just a minute. You have a mortgage. You have a car. You have an electrical bill. You need new tires. You know, I didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
If you cut off all your expenses, and then I could go rent a villa on an island in Vietnam instead of paying a mortgage. So if you'll just cut off your life and have zero expenses and just take that life and move it over to Vietnam, you can live in Vietnam. And I was a speaker, you know, I made money there. I saved my nickels and dimes, and then I wrote 4 bestsellers. And so I had some income. Steven Spielberg made Flags of Our Fathers. But it, you know, I mean, I'll tell you, there were dark days. I thought I was blowing this money. I went like 7, 8 years and I didn't have a book. I didn't know what it was about, Jim, you know,
well,
and I was lost.
Right. That's the very, very reason I asked. You're there 10 years. And did you start writing the book as nonfiction? Did you make a change somewhere along the line? I mean, I know when you start these things, you can't necessarily pinpoint the end, you know. That's the reason I asked.
Okay, so think of a pearl necklace. So what I did, I would do an interview and then I would polish that pearl. And then they would take me out to where a battle was and I would do the interviews and I would polish that pearl. So I had all these pearls lined up that were nonfiction, but I couldn't string them together unless I did fiction. So I got hit by a car in New Zealand. I was lying on my back for 9 months, paralyzed. They thought I'd never walk again. And I was listening to YouTube videos on how to write a book. Well, they don't do books on nonfiction, how to write a book. They just interview novelists. And I'm listening and I get the idea, you know, I've got all those pearls. I got all those stories. And if I just fictionalize it, it'll allow me to put together these stories. So I got out of my bed, and the first day I worked 10 minutes and I had to go back to bed. And the second day I worked 11 minutes and finally came out with this book.
That's amazing. Especially like, when you're laying in bed and they tell you you're not going to walk again, what do you think? F you? I mean, it's like, how do you deal with that?
I broke my neck when I was 19 on Anigo football. And I was in the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. So you know what that means. If you're 19 years old in the Mayo Clinic, I mean,
James, you busted your neck playing high school football?
I should be like Superman, like Reeves, who died, you know, in the wheelchair with the
right.
So they couldn't figure out why I had a life. I've been in pain all my life, but I've been able to move. And then I got in a car accident and I'm in, you know, so the doctors, I mean, who cares? But I got up and I thought I can write 10 minutes. Maybe I'll write 10 minutes a day. And then I got to 20 minutes and, you know, I had all the pearls lined up. I had all the research was on my computer. I had all these shiny stories, but I couldn't get them together until I novelized it.
I
So
understand.
the book, go ahead.
We have to backtrack. You say, who cares? But a lot of people don't end up doing what you did. I mean, what, it's like, a lot of people do end up in bed for the rest of their life. What's the difference between you and those other people?
Well, I was in bed a lot of today. I have a lot of pain. I mean, there's no difference. But I mean, Vince Lombardi said that pain is in your mind. And I was listening to a Buddhist guy, and you know what he said? He said, pain is your nerves sending a signal about pain. And he said, get over it. It's just a signal, to your brain.
Yeah.
And just don't pay attention to it. So Vince Lombardi was right. Pain is in your mind.
So did you actually know Vince relatively well? I mean, I know you caddied for him, but I mean, did you actually spend a lot of time talking to him?
Well, nobody spent a lot of time talking to Vince Lombardi. He talked to people,
Okay.
No, he was No.
Yeah.
I was 13, 14 carrying coach's clubs. I mean, he was coach.
Uh-huh.
And even like 18 holes, he just walked straight ahead. And, I mean, the respect, this was God walking around,
right.
He was chewing his teeth. He was thinking, he was always thinking. He seemed like he was a distracted guy, but he was thinking about one thing, and that's how to win. One thing he never had to worry about was Minnesota, Jim. That was the one team.
And he still doesn't. And even though it's dead, he still doesn't have to worry about it.
Well, I grew up with heroes. Bart Starr was 3 cottages down. Zeke Brukowski would water ski by. Fuzzy Thurston. I was playing in his home as a kid. The Green Bay Packers were all around me. And then on Sunday, I would see these gods,
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, I was always under the impression that Vince was a pretty no-nonsense guy. I mean, I never even came close to like meeting him or anything, but James,
No, coach.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying coach. He was just coach.
So you wrote this book, Fly Boys, about these the guys who got captured. And I'm forgetting, was this Vietnam too? I can't even remember. Or Korea, I can't remember. No, this was World War II.
No. So George Herbert Walker Bush gets shot down. A sub picks him up.
Right.
But he was bombing the island of Chichijima.
Yeah.
So then George Herbert Walker Bush goes to school in Yale, and he doesn't know that there's a secret trial out in Guam, and the Japanese cut open the stomachs of 8 American aviators and ate their livers. They barbecued them. They were going to barbecue and eat George Bush.
Right.
And I got the documents from a guy who was dying. He was sworn to secrecy at the trial, but he gave me the documents, and he took it to the BBC, and the BBC said, you're crazy. They weren't eating people. And nobody would listen to him. And I thought, maybe this is true. So I barged in on George Herbert Walker Bush's life. That's another story. How I cornered him in a men's room. And I said, President Bush, I said, I went to where you were shot down, and this other guy got his liver eaten, and you got to talk to me. And he said, James, I can't talk to you. My son just became president, and I'm not giving interviews. And I said, I don't care about that. I said, 8 guys got killed. You got away, and you got to talk to me. So George Bush, once I convinced him I knew what I was talking about, said, James, bring me back to Chichijima. And he told the Secret Service, listen to James, we're going. So I took George Bush back to where he was going to get his head cut off, and I introduced him to the Japanese who were going to do it.
Hold on, James. Did you mean you literally took him back there? He traveled?
It's in the book Fly Boys.
Yeah.
We flew from the United States to an air base in Japan, and then Chichijima it's mountainous. You can't land there.
Right.
So we went to Iwo Jima. There's a picture in the book of me and President Bush on Mount Suribachi in Iwo Jima. And then the Japanese military helicoptered us over to Chichijima, and we got out, and there were some Japanese soldiers I had pre-positioned. And I said, so President Bush, you were bombing these guys trying to kill them, right? And he said, yes. And I said to the Japanese, I said, you shot him down and you were going to cut his head off, right? And they said, yes. And I said, okay, guys, let's have a beer. And they held each other. These guys were, in their 80s.
Yeah.
George Bush, tears, hugging the Japanese who were going to kill him. The Japanese hugging, Bush is like 8 feet tall, The Japanese are hugging him. And these vets are crying. You really realize what war is about. They hated each other when they were 21. And then when they're 81, they're hugging each other and crying.
Yeah.
They were going to kill each other.
Also, it was miraculous that Bush got scooped out of the ocean, wasn't it? That he even got rescued, wasn't it?
Bush knew he was a goner. The Japanese, he's looking at the island. He's paddling for 3 hours. He's vomiting from the salt water. I'm dead. And he sees a periscope and he says, the Japanese got me. And there was a submarine in the area by accident. So we're talking about my book, Flyboys. Yeah. 8 guys get killed. The guy that gets away becomes president of the United States.
Right, I know.
If you made it up, nobody would believe it.
No, that's correct. That's the very reason I brought it up. No one would believe it. You're absolutely right. And the real amazing thing is, and this is maybe off topic, I don't care. George Bush basically died probably knowing more secrets than any other human on the planet. He was the director of the CIA. He was the president of the United States. He was vice president. This guy his service went on forever. And the stuff he probably went to his grave with is probably absolutely mind-boggling. I just find, did any of that ever come up? Did he ever say anything that you thought was like, out of not necessarily out of character, but out of line regarding anything like that at all?
He was the head of, his father helped set up the CIA. Bush was in Navy intelligence. No. Bush knew a lot. He advised Ronald Reagan in secret meetings. Bush wouldn't talk to me because I was an author. He said, I read Flags of Our Fathers, James, but I can't talk to you. So I said, President Bush. I said, my book ends when you're 21. So you're not even president. So I said, I promise I won't ask you any questions beyond 1945. And Bush looks out the window and he says, do you mean we're not going to talk about Iraq? And I said, yes, sir. I said, we won't talk about Iraq. And then he put out his hand, his hand's like bigger than 2 of mine. He was a huge athletic guy. Yeah. And I slept in both of his homes. I've eaten a lot with him. I've been on airplanes with him. I took him back to where he's going to get killed. I heard a lot of stuff. I heard a lot of conference calls, and that I can't talk about, but I fulfilled my promise. I would never ask him about anything after 1945.
Yeah.
So he trusted me. I was around. I was an inside guy. James, let's go to the gym.
And so, what is he, about 80 at this point?
George Herbert Walker Bush. No, he's dead. He died at 94.
No, this time you're dealing with him. During the time you knew him.
He was. I met him when he was 77, and he flies into Iwo Jima. And we're staying in a army barracks, a Japanese army barracks. He picks up his bag and he goes jumps up like 2 steps at a time, up 3 floors. He's 77. This guy knew Babe Ruth. He was captain of the Yale baseball team. At 77, no, you didn't want to play tennis at 77. But Jim, can I tell this story?
I'm sorry.
I saw him decline. No, I didn't mean like you're interrupting me.
No, that's okay. That's all right. Go ahead.
When you talk about a story of mind over matter, I saw him decline with Parkinson's. At first, his leg is kind of funny. Then he's dragging his leg. Then he has a cane. Then he's in a wheelchair. Then he stiffens in the wheel. So, like, I saw him decline over 10 years. Jim, he never talked about it. He was George Bush. And then I got together with Bush and Dole. They asked me to give a speech for a World War II event. Dole was like a little midget. His assistant had to feed him. Yeah. He couldn't tie his own tie. And Bob Dole was on the front page of the New York Times that day. Yeah. His assistant's feeding him. He's on the front page of the New York Times. He's entertaining everybody. George Bush is stiff in a wheelchair, but he's got meetings, he's got events. And I realized these guys, you can cut off their hands, their legs. It doesn't matter. Yeah. You keep going. There's tomorrow. They're not thinking about today, my hands don't work and my legs don't work. I mean, amazing mind over matter guys. So that's how I treat my pain now. Like, pain's in your head, forget it. I got another book to write, and I'm working on another book.
Are you moving for that one?
No, I'm going to write it here. I'm right on the beach, and I've got it, it's in my computer, and I just got to get it out. But I'm really devoted. This Precious Freedom is my favorite book because it is, Vietnam has been, chewed over like cud for 50 years. And then I go to Vietnam. I'll give you one insight. I go to Vietnam and this veteran says, Mr. Bradley, if you're an American, if you tell me the story of Vietnam, you'll say there was a North Vietnam, a South Vietnam, and the North invaded the South and you defended the South. I said, yeah. He said, there was no North and South Vietnam. He said, you drew a line and the New York Times published North and South. There was only one Vietnam. He said, Mr. Bradley, the French came and they called me an Indo-Chinese. What is that? I was Vietnamese. Then we beat the French and then the CIA came in and said, you're South Vietnamese. He said, I wasn't South Vietnamese. I was Vietnamese. And if you read the speeches of Ho Chi Minh and Pham Van Dong as prime minister, they start every speech. There's only one Vietnam. Vietnam will always be one. There were not two. Walter Cronkite, North Vietnamese forces invaded the South. That was all bullshit. That was Western bullshit. That never happened. I never got a Vietnamese to talk to me about communism. They weren't fighting for, we don't say capitalist forces today, George Washington and the capitalist forces at Valley Forge were fighting for capital. You don't fight for capitalism. You fight for your mother's house. We invaded Vietnam and the Vietnamese, that's the name of the book, Precious Freedom. Ho Chi Minh made it a moral case. He said, there's nothing more precious than freedom. So Vietnam had a moral goal, freedom. America didn't know what they were fighting for. That's not the soldiers and Marines. That's our leaders.
Right.
They couldn't define what Ho Chi Minh defined it really narrowly. Yeah, they killed your mother. They burnt down your house. They're shooting you, but you got to keep going because nothing is more precious than freedom. That's why this book is Precious Freedom. They were fighting just like George Washington for freedom.
So James, well, let me run a counter scenario past you. So you're talking about Ho Chi Minh, on how he perfectly defined this. Then you go to World War II, where the Japanese emperor also perfectly defined what they were doing, and he turned out to be wrong. How do you, it's like, I've had quite a few people on the show. Jonathan Lockwood is a military historian. He comes on regularly. We've talked about this several times about a thing I find fascinating about the end of the war, dropping the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, is, and very few people knew this, we only had 2 bombs, So we assumed, okay, they used 1 bomb in the test at Trinity. We had 2 left, and the Americans assumed after we dropped the bomb on Hiroshima that the Japanese would give up, and the Japanese basically gave us a finger and said, fuck you, no, we're not giving up. And so then we dropped the second one. And the thing is, if they had said the same thing again, we had nothing. And no one thinks about that.
Okay. But I covered that in my book, Flyboys, about the bombing. But let's get back to the definition of what they're fighting for. And you
Yeah,
said the
right.
emperor defined it.
Yeah,
Okay, no, just a minute. Ho Chi Minh was within his nation. He said, when the Americans come in your front yard, fight for your front yard. I was from Wisconsin. If you invaded me from Minnesota, I would fight for my front yard. I'd fight for my backyard, my basement, my mother's kitchen. So if Ho Chi Minh invaded Minnesota, he would have lost. The emperor of Japan invaded China and all these different countries. You can't invade other countries and win. Bill or Jim, the American military hasn't won anything in 80 years because they're invading Afghanistan. I went to Afghanistan. Go to Afghanistan. I lived in Iran. You can't beat people who are fighting for their basements, for their homes. Okay?
yeah,
We never invaded Japan. Japan gave up because it was an island and we cut it off with submarines and bombing. Where Japan lost it was that they overextended themselves in China. Where American empire is losing it is we have 1,000 bases around the world. If the American military was in the United States defending the borders, that's different. Ho Chi Minh has the largest, Vietnam today has the largest military in the world if you count reserves. They don't invade other countries, so they don't lose. They're only defending their own borders. So if the American military was defending our own borders, we'd be fine. But we have 1,000 bases around the world and we're interfering with other people's front yards. Doesn't work in Afghanistan, 20 years. Didn't work in Vietnam. That was a 30-year war, Bill, in Vietnam.
right.
From
Right.
1945 to 1975. So
Yeah,
I want to make this point, and I make it in the book. One of the characters says, "Oh, I guess you're saying Ho Chi Minh's a genius." And he's saying, no. He said, if Ho Chi Minh, and the character's from Minnesota, he says, if Ho Chi Minh invaded Minnesota, Minnesota would beat the bejeebers out of Ho Chi Minh because he's trying to do the impossible. What Ho Chi Minh said, he didn't say, let's invade these other countries and make them Vietnamese.
right.
You're not going to make the Minnesota people eat noodles and eat with chopsticks. But Americans think if you send the military to Vietnam, everybody's going to want to eat with a fork and potatoes and meatloaf. And no. So the American military is trying to do things that they can't do. And they've proven it 80 years in a row of losses. And it's not the military's fault. It's the Obamas and the Bushes and that are sending them overseas.
Hey, James, is this the fault of civilian leadership in U.S. military? Just the fact that by design we have civilians running the military? Is that part of the problem?
No, the fault is, let's say I took Minnesota people and said, you go run New Orleans. And I took New Orleans people and said, you go run St. Paul and Minneapolis. There'd be riots everywhere. You can't have New Orleans people run, but then Americans imagine, we'll just send Americans over to Saigon and over to Kabul and run it the American way. It doesn't work. We know how to run our front yards. We know how to run our own communities. And this is not James Bradley talking. 2 generals ran the United States. One was called George Washington. And in his final message, this is not one message, but his final speech, he says, don't get involved with other countries. That will be the downfall of the United States. Don't get involved with other countries. Stay home, America first. Then President Eisenhower, works on his goodbye speech for 3 years, Jim. And
Yeah.
he says, watch out for the military-industrial complex. They're
Right.
going to want to run around the world to make money. So those 2 guys, those 2 generals, they warned about, don't do this. And then we shot John Kennedy. John Kennedy said, we're not going into Vietnam. And they put a bullet in his head. And 1 month later, Lyndon Johnson said to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, you give me my election, I'll give you your wall.
Yeah.
So Johnson just thought it was a trade-off. I'll give the military the war. They'll wrap it up in 2 months. Johnson thought the Vietnam War was just another piece of paper in his inbox. He had no idea, those little, he said, that's a raggedy ass little nation. Well, we put the American Marines in Vietnam. 30% of the casualties were immediately from bamboo. Guys' ankles splintered. Think of a leg splintering, and it's bamboo. Toothless grandmothers were whittling the bamboo, and little 13-year-old kids were putting the bamboo in the dirt. U.S. Marines were being beat by teenagers with bamboo, 30% casualties. But this is because they're defending their homes, Jim. And there's nothing more precious than freedom than the name of the book.
James, have you ever looked or given any thought or looked into what happened to Johnson personally? I mean, it seems like the war, like personally decimated him. Is that true? Or do you have any thoughts on that at all?
What decimated him was his involvement in the killing of John F. Kennedy. And his law firm had to cover him with psychologists. And those files are still locked up in that law firm. You can look at it. Johnson felt guilt over what he did to John F. Kennedy. And then Doris Kearns Goodwin with little short miniskirts goes down and is sleeping in Johnson's house and is still covering up for him today. No, Johnson didn't care about the 3 million people he killed over there. He only cared about his reputation, that he had to resign because it didn't work out. I napalmed them and chemicals and did everything I could. And Vietnam, he had to resign because of Vietnam. Johnson only cared about himself. This was a bottle of Chivas a day. He was walking around the White House pulling his donger out, screaming at the blacks, the words I can't say. This is a filthy man who was involved with the death of the president. There's testimony that he killed 8 people in a civil trial. Billy Hargis. I can't get into it here. No, Johnson was a filthy guy, and he got what he deserved.
Well, and what literally was just basically his mental anguish is what he deserved, huh? It's like, I mean, nothing ever really happened except the fact he fell apart. Except
he fell apart. So Richard Nixon was talking to Roger Stone, and they had a couple of Nixon's martinis. And Roger Stone stuck it to Nixon. He said, President Nixon, who killed John Kennedy? And Nixon looked up and said, both Lyndon and I wanted to be president, but I wouldn't kill for it. So you can see in this book, Precious Freedom, John Kennedy said no to the military going to Vietnam, but the military had deep plans. And by the way, if anybody thinks I'm talking against the military, I'm using the words of Commandant David Shoup. U.S. Commandant David Shoup won the Medal of Honor at Tarawa, and he resigned when LBJ went into Vietnam. And he took off his uniform, put on a tie, and he crisscrossed the United States in the 60s. And David Shoup said, Ho Chi Minh's the George Washington of Vietnam. He said, I'm former commandant of the Marines. We can't win. He said, the Vietnamese fight during the night while we're sleeping. And they go underground during the day. He said, I trained the Marines. The Marines cannot win in Vietnam. This is the commandant, Jim, that was saying that. But when you and I were little kids, Walter Cronkite wouldn't, allow David Shoup on the air. We couldn't hear that argument. All we heard was we're winning in Vietnam. We didn't win one day of that war. Statistically, it looked like we were winning, but we couldn't hold any territory. That's why the helicopter. See, if you can, Iwo Jima, they went inch by inch and took the island. In Vietnam, they couldn't take the territory, so they flew. And the Vietnamese said, Uncle Ho told us every time you see a helicopter, it means that America's losing because they can't take territory.
That's just fascinating. you're talking about Walter Cronkite. Is the problem with the U.S. media is that do we just like oversimplify stuff? I mean, even I'm not even talking about just plain out lying, but even when it comes to, is it just expedience? Do we just like oversimplify stuff just to get it over the air? Is like, is it lying by expediency?
Well, Jim, if I would just, if you would just toe the line and I give you $15 million a year and to never have any narrative on that I don't want on, and, you're part of the club in New York and Washington, and we'll raise you to 20 million a year. And I lived in New York for many years and I've been inside the media. I've been in, the publishers had me up to his suite, a few times at the New York Times. And, you're in the club and you're paid a lot. And then if you don't want to toe the line, you're not going to be in the club. So
Yeah.
Walter Cronkite toed the line. We had torture chambers, CIA torture chambers all over Vietnam, in every province. Walter Cronkite knew this. He never talked about it. Why not? He knew the tortures. William Colby, the head of the CIA, went in front of Congress and said, yeah, we kidnapped about 80,000 people and killed them, civilians. If a Nazi concentration camp guard had said that in front of Congress, they would have handcuffed them right there, right?
Yeah.
But no, but the CIA, what? You kidnapped 80,000 innocent people out of their beds and tortured them to death? Yep. Well, Walter Cronkite knew. Ken Burns just did a documentary in 2017. What Ken Burns did is took all the lies from the 60s and 70s and then repackaged them and retold the lies. I watched the Ken Burns documentary from Vietnam with Vietnamese. They were howling with laughter. It's just like, how could this North Vietnam and the communists, I had a Buffalo boy say to me, Mr. Bradley, communist? He said, I was 15 years old. I didn't know anything about democracy and communism, and we're not going to fight for communism. He said, Hanoi didn't motivate me. He said, the Americans came in and they shot my mother and sister. He said, that's all the politics I had to know. You could see that's an American, that's the uniform. See, the Vietnamese said protracted war, people's war, and they would say protracted. Well, protracted means lengthy. And I thought that just meant, we're brave, we're never going to give up.
Right.
No, part of the strategy is they want protracted war because, see, that villager over the mountain, they don't know that America's the enemy. What's an American? And then an American jet comes and drops a bomb, and all of a sudden they see the American flag and they see an American Marine, and they know who the enemy is. And then they go to the force, they get trained, and then the Americans go to the next valley and educate the next people. I had a guy say to me, I was trying to motivate the villagers to get going and organize, and I couldn't get it across to them. And then an American jet came and dropped some bombs. Man, all of a sudden they were ready to fight.
Hey,
but again, it isn't.
No,
go ahead.
You go ahead.
I was just going to say, I want to say, it's Veterans Day a couple of days ago. The Vietnamese admire the American veteran and they love Americans. And I said, how can you love Americans? They killed your mother, father. And they said, oh, Uncle Ho told us not to hate the Americans. I said, what are you talking about? We hate the Japanese for Pearl Harbor. And they said, no. Uncle Ho said, the American soldier is a victim of the U.S. government, just like you. He said, you have to have empathy. The American soldier doesn't want to be here fighting. It's the U.S. government that's lying and making him fight. He said, you got to shoot him to get him out of here, but we don't hate the Americans. And the Americans are the #1 most beloved people, foreigners in Vietnam. I'll say to any Americans, go to Vietnam. They're growing by 8% a year. The streets are clean. There's no homeless.
I know.
And they love Americans.
Yes, I know that's true. I know you're right. They do. But here's my question: If Ken Burns is towing the party line and you're not, how are you? Are you having trouble getting your books out? I mean, it's like, Or
Of
do you,
course. Of course, he's on government propaganda. See,
yes,
the Chinese say to me, Mr. Bradley, the difference between us and Americans is that we know that our media is controlled. Americans imagine that their media is PBS, public broadcast, BBC, British broad. These are government controlled channels.
that's right.
So Ken Burns is on PBS. Who is Ken Burns' sponsor? Bank of America. Yeah, this is all American propaganda.
Yeah. But the
No,
thing, no,
it,
you and I know that, but a lot
go
of the
ahead.
public hasn't figured it out, you know?
Well, I'm giving up on the public that when it says public broadcasting, see, Professor John Mersheimer of the University of Chicago wrote this book called Why Leaders Lie. And he
Uh-huh.
wanted to understand like why Trump and Putin would lie to each other. And he was shocked. He's found leaders don't lie to each other because they can all see what's happening. They can't lie to each other. He says leaders lie downwards. He said the problem is not the leadership, it's that people believe the leaders. So Americans are looking up, oh, Ken Burns, PBS must be telling the truth. And it's a bunch of laughable garbage.
Yeah, well, I call it the Project Nightingale effect. I mean, we know for a fact that 50 years ago, the CIA literally paid journalists to lie. I assume it's still happening, but they're not paying you, but you're getting your books out. Although I did read a really interesting statistic. Now you had to go through 27 publishers before Flags of Our Fathers was published. Is that true?
Yeah, in the back of this book, Precious Freedom, at the end, I give some encouragement to writers. Flags of Our Fathers, I got 27 letters from 27 publishers over 2 years. My wife was flat on the bed crying face down. I had a friend fly in from Chicago. I was living in New York, take me out to lunch. I said, hi, Peter. It was an intervention. James, you had 28, at this point, he said, you had 18 publishers turn you down. The publishers know more than you, James. Why don't you give it up? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Well, here's another. I've used this story a lot. I mean, J.K. Rowling went through 40, I think it was 43 publishers before anyone published her book. And literally, that first Harry Potter book is the single biggest selling book in human history, other than the Bible. And so, I mean, I look at this all the time. These are people who are supposed to know what's going on. Although the real reason I brought this up is that, do you think in your case, like, people were paid not to publish it? Do you think that the party line was about what you're writing about, not necessarily the quality of the book?
the question is what, Jim? I'm sorry.
The question is, do you think you had so much trouble getting the first book published because of what it was about, and not necessarily the quality of it or the saleability of it per se?
Okay, we're back in Flags of Our Fathers days.
Yeah, right.
And I wasn't an author. I was a guy off the street, but I was a marketing guy. And I said, this will be New York Times #1. It's the #1 photo in history, tallest
Right.
bronze monument. It's got Franklin
And
Roosevelt, Harry Truman,
you have a personal tie to it too. That's why I'm so surprised you had such a hard time getting it published.
No, they all agreed that it would never get off the ground. But my family, my mother, my brothers, nobody, I had zero support. But I thought, this is ridiculous. It's obvious. And I didn't pitch it as a good book. I pitched it as a New York Times #1 bestseller, not because of me, but because of the photograph.
Right.
And it came out and it was #1. Steven Spielberg bought the book. But here, let me back up before we talk about how wonderful I am. I told this story to Clint Eastwood. We were in Iceland shooting Flags of Our Fathers. And I said, yeah, I had turn downs and my publisher and, doesn't want me to. And Clint Eastwood says, yeah, sounds like my life. And I said, sounds like what are you talking about? You're Clint Eastwood. And he said, James, did you see $1 Million Baby? Well, for the audience, $1 Million Baby won the best picture, not good picture, but best picture in 1996.
It did.
And it's a boxing movie.
Right.
So I said, so, and then, you know, Clint Eastwood by the 1990s, it probably brought in $7 billion into Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
So he takes $1 Million Baby to Warner Brothers, and they say, Clint, you got old. You know, Clint, it's a boxing movie. Nobody's going to watch a boxing movie. And it's, Clint, it's a boxing movie with a girl in it. No. So Warner Brothers, so Clint Eastwood, but this is Clint Eastwood saying, James, if you want to get something published, do a sequel. Do Rocky V. He said, do Flags of Our Fathers 3. He said, but if you want to do something new, he said, I don't think I have a good idea until I get 2 no's. So Clint Eastwood, throughout his career, is getting turned down. This book, Precious Freedom, got turned down by 8 publishers. And I'm not blaming anybody. It's just not your taste. You don't go to every restaurant in town, Jim. You don't drink every drink and go to every restaurant. And you turn down some, you know, you just don't like some. But, you know, but the thing is, you keep going. I sold pots and pans when I was a kid. And we learned that if you do 10 presentations, you're going to get 7 no's and 3 yeses. So presenting anything, especially creatively, I just, you know, Oliver Stone's on the back of this book praising it. And I just listened to an interview. Oliver Stone's Platoon, he got turned down for 10 years. These guys, listen to what, you know, authors talk about at the back of their book and when they interview about movies. These are guys who like had an idea, they get turned down for 10 years, and then finally somebody. So yeah, I got turned down for 2 years. And then, you know, my agent, I'm not going to name names, but the agent that had me before, when I said I was going to write a book on Vietnam, his face went. And I said, what's the matter? And he said, there's been no bestseller about Vietnam since Best and Brightest in 1972 by David Halberstam. And I said, well, I'm going to write a bestseller. And he was like, he just lost a client. Bradley went crazy. And then I disappeared into the swamps of Vietnam, and I'm living on an island. And, you know, so everybody thought I was crazy.
I think people need to hear this stuff, James. They do, you know, because it's like, but I also do need to point out, and I don't need to tell you this, there's a difference between being rejected by 8 publishers and by 23. There is, you know, 23 is.
Well, it all hurts. I'm supposed to be on another show, and they're dinging me for it.
All right, I'll let you go. And I really appreciate it.
Okay.
You know, I got, you know, I talk too much. That's my problem, James, but it's good if you do a talk show. That's good. So I really appreciate you joining us today.
Manage your callers from the call-in studio web interface.
I don't know if you heard that. I'm now in the host room. They turned on our phone system. God, so is it me? I just found that fascinating as hell. I mean, I sat here and watched it, even though I did it a few hours ago. This guy's just, and he's got quite the, you know, there's a takeaway here. Seriously, don't give up. Especially, we've got a problem in the United States here. I don't know if this is, there's a whole bunch of people that call themselves experts that don't know what the hell they're doing. And it's endemic at this point. Really, what the fuck? You know? So guy gets turned on. First of all, his dad's in the picture. You know, it's the single most famous photograph in human history. He's right. The raising of the flag at Iwo Jima. He writes a book about it. And he gets turned on 28 times. And then the book finally comes out. The 29th publisher says yes. Book comes out, it's instant number one bestseller. Bought for a movie. Movie's a huge success. And all of a sudden he's a writer, you know. But what do you I was talking to a friend of mine after we filmed the interview this afternoon. I called a friend of mine that we've been having this conversation for like several years about the fact that the best example, as I brought up during the talk with James, is J.K. Rowling. This woman was turned down by every major publisher on the planet, and finally, a small publisher from the United States, Scholastica, that had never published a novel before, ever. They publish children's educational literature. That it's literally like Dick and Jane books. Decided to take a flyer on this, and it is literally the biggest selling book in human history. And 47 some odd people who are supposed to be hired specifically to find books turned it down. What do you say about stuff like that? It's like that. Well, they were all wrong, and they're supposed to be experts. I'm putting them on.
This is Think.
Think, are you there?
Yep, this is me. I wasn't sure if I'm cutting off your rant about the
No.
J.K. Rowling. I actually like what you were saying.
I was
cool.
I was literally just killing time till he showed up. So, although no, I do feel pretty strongly about that. I mean, it is really true. I mean, that's nuts. 47 people are supposed to be experts passed on this, and it wasn't just they were wrong, they were stunningly and completely wrong. That's the real amazing thing. You know, so people talk about experts. Well, fuck experts. That's what I say. How are you doing?
Yeah. Pretty good. Hey, I like what James had said about he took 10 minutes every day when he was I think he said he had back surgery,
yeah,
or something like that, and he was in the hospital, and he took 10 minutes every day to do something.
Yeah.
So I went to college for art, and ever since I graduated, I just couldn't do it anymore. I just don't like drawing. I think it was the figure drawing classes I had where I was spending hours a day drawing the human anatomy down to the muscle. I had to know the muscle, the name of the muscle, the bone, and everything, and it killed me. And for the longest time, I wouldn't draw again. But these days, for the past like 3 or 4 years, I've been doing it again, and it's because I only spend 10 minutes a day.
Oh, interesting.
And and it got me moving again. So this is what I heard, that if you spend 10 minutes a day, every day, doing something, that you will be better than 75% of the world.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah. And that's all it takes, 10 minutes a day. And then I don't do 10 minutes a day now. I do hours a day, but that's how I got started, just like 10 minutes. And just not taking it so seriously. Like it's just make it fun again. And I think that 10 minutes was what did it. And I like hearing him say that. I thought that was really cool. It seems like.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. No, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
No, I got.
No, go ahead.
All right, I will. I went to music school and studied with a guy named Alfred Reed. Who may not be that well known to the public, but he was literally next to J.S. Bach, the most published composer in human history. The guy had hundreds and hundreds of pieces under his belt, and he only wrote music 1 hour a day. But he said he did it every single day, never missed a day, 7 days a week, ever. He wrote 1 hour a day. That was it. But he did it like you said, he did it forever. And that's how, and he produced a ridiculous output of music doing that.
Yeah, I think that's the trick. Just to do little by little. I think my problem before was that I kept thinking about the final piece, and I wanted to do that final piece in that one session that I would draw or whatever, did video or whatever. I wanted to finish it in one session, but I never could. And then so I'll spend 8 hours trying to get it done. and I won't finish it. And I know the next day I'm going to spend another 8, and then the next day. And it's that procrastination of time that I'm going to lose of my life. 8 hours. Yeah. And then it just made me hate it.
And that's,
it just made me hate.
Wouldn't you call that dread?
Yeah.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It eventually just killed me. And it didn't make it fun anymore. I felt like it was more like work, and there was no well, what is it, like a inspiration. There was no impulse. There was no more impulse and inspiration anymore. It just felt like I was doing it because it was work. You know, I didn't feel anything special.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going on a tangent.
No. But I'm curious. So, were you? I don't even know. Were you alive during the Vietnam War?
So during the Vietnam War, I was born. I can remember weird things when I was younger. I left Vietnam when I was 6 years old, 5 or 6, somewhere in between there. My brother was born in 1975 when Vietnam declared peace.
Yeah.
You know, that's when the U.S. left Vietnam.
Right.
And that's when my brother was born. And we left not too much long afterwards. My whole family was fighting for the South. My dad was part of the Navy SEALs. Well, someone told me that my dad was not a Navy SEAL, like a natural Navy SEAL, but he was more like a translator for them. Like he'll follow them around and help translate every time they would interact with a village or something like that. That's what somebody told me. But I'll tell you, I live with my dad. I hate the guy. I'll punch him in the face if I see him. And I think that he saw war. He was physically there. Like I don't know if he killed hundreds of people, but I'm pretty sure he saw a lot of murders take place. And he was probably part of something like that. My whole family's filled with people that has killed people. And when they get together and they drink and they talk, they have these stories. It's just so, oh my God, like you guys actually went through doing. This is the weirdest story. I'm going to go on a side note real quick. I have this one uncle.
Yeah.
I have this one uncle that claims every time he gets drunk, he'll say he killed 1,000 Viet Cong. He was one of those guys that he'll lay down on this long gun, is what he says, and then someone else would feed the bullets. So it's him holding the gun, pulling the trigger, another person just sliding the row of bullets into the gun, and he'll shoot into the woods. And he says he kills 1,000, but I'm pretty sure he didn't. I think he exaggerated, but I'm positive he killed 1, maybe 2. Yeah, they're all, but he's sane. My dad is not sane. My dad is lost. He's weirdo guy.
Oh, is he still alive?
I don't know. My dad, yeah. He won't be if I see him. I'm sorry. I'm over exaggerating. I'm really over exaggerating. I don't like my dad, but I won't kill him.
Yeah.
It's just I don't like him. He's always in survival mode.
Yeah. Think, did you buy James Bradley's theory that as far as the Vietnamese were concerned, there was no North and South? Was that true from what you remember or no?
I heard him say that. But I don't. He did more research than I did. I lived in Vietnam. After college, I did go back to Vietnam, and I got to tell you, there was a division. It's almost like how here in America there's a black and white. The South people actually call Northern people Bac, B-A-C, which means Northern Vietnamese. And in the North, they'll call Vietnamese people from the South Minh Thai. So I think it's a division from what I heard. I don't think that at the time during the war that they looked at each other as one. I think that they looked at each other as enemies. Like, and there is a big difference between the North and the South in terms of the way the accent is. It is very potent. more potent than a person from New York City and a person from Louisiana. You know, the accents are super different, right?
Yeah.
From a Louisiana, yeah, it's even worse than that. You could tell right away that through a person's accent that they're from the north and they're from the south. So there is a division, and I think that they hated each other. I know that my dad and my whole family hates Northern Vietnamese people. They make fun of them every time they get together and drink. They make fun of their accents, and they say that things about them, like they'll mock them and say that they're really cheap and they're really evil people.
Yeah,
that's what my thing.
Did you did you buy at that time? I mean, okay, you're a little kid, so I don't know if you're aware, but about what Bradley was saying about the fact that there was also no real recognition of communism versus capitalism. Do you think that was true too?
I gotta tell you, that was another thing. I kind of disagree. I'm sorry. I
no.
have to disagree with that.
But that's why. Hey, that's why I had you on. I want to know what you think. You were actually there, so right.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure if you allow me to just speak my mind,
please. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure that the people knew that the in terms of the economic and the government was changing. That's why my family left. And that's why a lot of Vietnamese people that was part of the war left. They knew that now the government's going to change to a communist system where capitalism is not going to be the economic system anymore. And it's going to be shared now. And we see this happening in New York City. And I hate to say this shit, but it's I'm sorry, Jim.
No,
it's just how it.
You need to say it. Please go ahead.
So in Vietnam, this is what the communist northern people would say, that they were fighting for the poor. They always blamed capitalism. And they say it's capitalism making the people poor. And I got to tell you, from what I saw, there wasn't that many poor people at that time. When I see videos of Vietnam back then, I don't see that many poor people. But when I first went back to Vietnam in 2007 or 8 or something, 2006, I've never seen so many poor homeless people in my life. I might have told you before, Jim, I've never seen a woman sleeping out on the street with a 4-month-old baby before here in America. The only time I've seen that was in Vietnam. I remember going home at night, 2 or 3 in the morning, because I'm out partying, and I'll almost step on one of these ladies that have a 4-month-old baby. I think they're 4 months. They're just super small babies.
Yeah.
Breastfeeding them while she's sleeping on a cardboard on the sidewalk. When I see videos of Vietnam back then, I didn't see that. So anyway, going back, the North, the Communist Party would blame capitalism, and they said, we're here to help bring the poor people up. We're going to make society better so that there's no poor people. So after the North won the war, and here's the thing about, I'll go back to how the North won. I'll go back to that.
But okay.
After the North won, what they did was they started taking the property of rich people, which was almost everywhere in Vietnam at the time. If you owned a house, you didn't have to be a millionaire. As long as you owned a house, they would take it. And they didn't take it and give it to poor people. The generals would take it and just give it to their family.
Of course.
So the military, yeah, and that's all they did. They just took it and gave it to themselves. So the only people that profited from the North winning the war were the generals and the soldiers. So if you were a militia and you won that war, now you have property that's yours. Right. And all the poor people just didn't. More and more people became poor because the people that did own the houses are now in a ghetto area. I don't know what they call it, an economic housing, I think is what the terminology is, but we'll know it here in the United States in a different term as a ghetto. they started putting all these people that once owned property into a separate area, an economic division for these people. And those people, I think, eventually became the poor class of Vietnam. And I wouldn't be surprised if in 2006, most of those homeless people that I did see had ties to the rich economic class at one time. But now they're poor because of what had happened during that war.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. Finish.
No, Jim. You were going to ask me something?
Yeah, I was. My question is, how would you describe the economic system in Vietnam right now? Is it kind of like, I don't know, like laissez-faire communism, or how would you describe it? I don't what. All I know is they're doing well,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, they're doing very well, Jim. They're doing well. Every year I go back, they're doing better than better. When I went to Vietnam, the first time I went to Vietnam in 2006, we were still taking ferries across the Mekong Delta. So you would drive on these. They didn't have a highway system yet back then. You would drive like on a smooth road in Ho Chi Minh City, which was Saigon back then. They call it Ho Chi Minh City now. You would drive into a clean, smooth road like the roads here in the United States, and then once you get outside the city, you'll go on these like dirt roads. So they didn't build a highway system yet, and the drive was terrible. The bus I was in would constantly rock because the roads weren't smooth, and you would drive like this for hours, like 4 or 5 hours on a bus that was rocking and rocking. And then once you get to the Mekong Delta, the bus would go onto a ferry. And I gotta tell you, as soon as you get on, before you get on the ferry, there would be at least 30 or 40 street vendors, all super poor people, asking for money. They'll reach out into the open window of your bus asking for money or asking you to buy something or anything. They'll surround your bus with all this. All these people that are poor trying to get you to buy something. That's once. And here's another thing. I would drive. I would get on a motorbike when I'm in Ho Chi Minh City, and this was in 2006. And I would drive down some certain streets. I'm an adventurous. I would just like to drive around, check things out.
Yeah.
And I remember I drove down this one street in Ho Chi Minh City, and I got surrounded by all these motorbikes of women. There would be women driving other women, and they'll surround me. It's like I thought they were going to jump me, but it must have been 20 or 30 prostitutes trying to get me to yeah, just trying to get me to. I've never seen that.
No, I've never heard of it.
They would.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they would surround me and say, "Hey, come with me. She's not better than me. And they would all smile. Some of the, and from what I know, most of those women are not drug addicts. They were doing it as a job to try to support.
Yeah, right.
That's what I don't know. But every year that I go back, it's changed. It has gotten better. You won't find that scenario anymore of what I said about the prostitutes now. You won't. I drove everywhere to see if I can see that type of stuff again. I haven't found it yet. I think the government has cracked down on that and stopped it, so that's gone. From what I know, there might be a hidden spot, but I drove all. I don't see that. The highway system is much better now. There's no ferry, and all those people that jumped up on the bus and tried to get you to buy things, I don't see those people anymore. It's rare to see those type of people. Prices has gone up, but there's still a huge homeless community, but I think it's getting less and less. And from what I know, this is from actual research, Vietnam's economy is growing so fast, and they're saying it's better in terms of growth than Japan.
Yeah, so no, I've heard that too. I've heard that same thing, that they're absolutely, it's just leaps and bounds, that it's going just gangbusters is what I've heard.
Yeah, every time. So I'm a field and I work in the technology field, and I got to tell you, I install equipment like servers, POS systems, and routers. And I gotta tell you, I don't know how many times I see "Made in Vietnam" on these products. I see it so much now. "Made in Vietnam," "Made in Vietnam." I I, I don't. I think it has something to do with quality. I would like to think that, but I don't know what it is. I just know that the economy in Vietnam is good, and from what I see in terms of production, that it is kind of true. That is kind of true.
So
Jim, this is what I was.
no.
Go ahead,
You
Jim.
know,
You
you
were
go
going to
ahead.
answer.
You go ahead. You had a thought there. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So when I went to college here, I had a teacher that told me this, that the reason why the United States lost that war, lost the Vietnam War, was because here in America, so many people were drugged out. There was so many people against that war here in America that even the soldiers lost morale. So if you're in a gang, all right, Jim, I don't know, I don't know if I'm using the right analogy here, but if you're in a group and you want to fight another group, you don't want to say good things about the other group. If you want your group to fight them, you want to say bad things about the other group. You want to say, that guy's a rapist. He robs people. He's evil, and that's how you build morale to fight the other people. You
Right.
don't say good stuff about them. But here in America, at that time during the Vietnam War, you had all these people that's like Muhammad Ali saying that they never did anything to a black man. Muhammad Ali didn't want to go to war. You had even JFK was like, no, I don't want to continue this war. You had the whole hippie movement at Woodstock had all these songs about peace and love, and the morale was gone. That's what killed the war. That's why all these soldiers weren't serious about it. And that's why all these politicians were just like, we shouldn't continue this. When I talked to the generals, because when I was in Vietnam, I would drink with these generals and these police officers. And this is what they told me, that the Vietnam was ready to sign over, like lose, like in the North, they were ready to I don't know what that's called, but where they sign surrender. They signed
Right.
a form. They were ready
Treaty.
to surrender to the United States.
Right.
And out of nowhere, the United States just got up and left.
Yeah.
And they were shocked that happened. They were really shocked because they were ready to lose. There was no way
Right.
Vietnam was going to win.
Right.
No matter how many holes they drilled in the grounds and the jungles and all these traps, there was no way they could beat the technology of the United States. They knew that they were going to lose. But out of nowhere, the United States just withdrew.
Well, that is exactly
They were
what
ready
happened,
to-
Think. I mean, there was so much pressure on Nixon to end the war that, yeah, he finally just ended it. They stopped. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I was,
And that's what they told me. Go
I,
ahead, Tim.
I was, eligible for the draft the last year, and I did not get called. But I mean, so I was around 18. I still remember distinctly. Yeah, the war just ended because and you used the phrase morale. I would have used the phrase motivation or the word motivation. You're right. They weren't. The troops weren't motivated because you're right. Everybody was in America. We had all just gone soft. It's like, yeah, peace, love, blah blah blah, kumbaya.
That's right. It makes a lot of sense to me. There's no way a country like Vietnam would have beaten the United States. I'm not saying that the Vietnamese people weren't dedicated and
Right.
like they weren't. They didn't. They loved their country and they would fight to the end. A lot of them would, but it wasn't enough.
What?
I think that the United States, if they just kept going, they would have surrendered, and that's what the people there told me. And when I was there in Vietnam, and
Yeah.
I'm telling you this through the generals. My wife's family in Vietnam is deep in the Communist Party, which almost everybody in Vietnam is now. Everybody has a picture of Ho Chi Minh in their house that they offer blessings to. Now Ho Chi Minh is like their hero. And so, my wife's family in Vietnam is part of the like all kinds of government stuff. And when I would drink and hang out with them, that's what these older people would tell me, that they were just days away from surrender. Like the North was ready to surrender, just a couple of days. That's all it took. And out of nowhere, the United States just gave up. It's just crazy like that.
Well.
But
Think what?
go ahead,
So
Jeff.
what exactly kind of are the communists in Vietnam still dominant, or what is the? Is it just a communist party, or what is the actual economic system? How come they're doing so well? Do you know?
So this is what the Vietnam has adapted a capitalist economic system, but it's ran by a one-party communist government.
Right.
So in 2006, when I first went to Vietnam, almost every restaurant and business had the same name, because that's a real free market. There's no DBA needed. You could have the same name. You could just open whatever business. And that's what it was. It's almost all these businesses have the same name. A lot of them didn't even have a name. They just opened up a shop and then just had coffee tables, and then you just sat down and drank. There's no names. But every year, from 2006 to now, there's been rules and regulations, like here in the United States, where they have to have a DBA or an LLC or something to open up a business. And they're starting to have rules and regulations in terms of health. You can't just be a street vendor without properly having proper sanitation, that type of stuff, being cleansy. And they're building that type of stuff up. And I think it's that type of stuff that has allowed Vietnam to move up in terms of economic status. McDonald's is in Vietnam. That was a huge shock. I think McDonald's came into Vietnam in like 2016 or 15 or something. When I saw McDonald's there, I was like, oh my God, Vietnam has changed. This is going to be like America now. Before, you wouldn't see a McDonald's. There's Starbucks over there now. It's almost like America, right?
Well, the interesting thing about that is like Dao Chongpeng in China for about 20 years there before President Xi came into power. They were basically running the same thing. They were running capitalism under Communist Party rule, and it was actually working spectacularly. It was the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, and you could make an argument, and I hate to do it because I don't like communists, that in many ways that might be the best economic system. You have a capitalist system that is run by one party, so no one can disagree, but on the other hand, you can make decisions on a dime. And I was told by people I knew that lived in China at that time that unless you objected to the government, you could do pretty much anything you wanted. You could start any business. You could do it. The only thing you couldn't do is confront the government. That was it. And 80% of the population was fantastic with this. They were terrific. And for about 20 years there, they were making money hand over fist. And then Xi came in and he decided, like a lot of people, that he needed to control things. So it's kind of interesting how that works. But it doesn't surprise me that system would be working for them at all. It doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible system. I'm not incredible because I know communism is bad. I know that they take from the poor, even though they have this assumption or this intention of trying to help the poor. But anyway, it does work when one person is in total control and telling the society how it should be ran. So there's no argumentative. For example, here in the United States, we have a Democratic Party and a Republican Party. And you see what's going on. They're slowing process. This whole argument between the two has been slowing process down, right? Am I okay by saying that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And it's always been this way. We've been this way for 250 years. It's slow and it's messy.
Yeah, that's right. And especially now that Trump is president, you could see every time Trump wants to do something, the other side is always arguing. I'm telling you, honestly, if Trump tried to pass a drug to cure cancer, it won't be passed right away because the other side is going to consistently argue against it. No, you can't do. Yeah. And it's slowing a lot of progress down.
Yeah, that's very true.
a one policy government that controls a capitalist society might be a good thing. Might be.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't know what the
Un-American.
I don't know what the long-term ramifications are. You're right, but it does seem like it seems to work on the short, at least right now, currently. You know.
Yeah, China's doing really well, and you see, Vietnam won't be much longer until it becomes something like a Japan. I'm telling you, every year I go back, I'm surprised how many buildings are being built, like skyscrapers now, and the cost of living is really expensive now. It's
Uh-huh.
really expensive in Vietnam. It's not cheap like how it was before. The food is cheap. It's cheap in terms of like maybe $1 or two less than the United States now. Whereas back then, a bowl of pho, which is a noodle soup, that was $10 here in America, was like 25 cents
Oh,
back
really?
in Vietnam.
Yeah.
But now, yeah, but now it's like $5 compared to like a $10 bowl of soup here in the States is $5.
You
Okay,
can
and that's a
still
really good bowl.
you can still get a slice of pizza and a soda on the street in New York City for $6. So I, I don't know. That's like, that's a pretty cheap meal. So I don't know. Hey, I'm gonna go. Okay, I want to wrap
Okay,
this up because I don't want I don't like these shows to get too long. But I really appreciate your insight
gotcha.
here, and I did. The fact that you were there and he was there and you guys had kind of different takes on it is kind of the very reason I wanted to put you on. So I'm glad you actually kind of illuminated your position. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me on, Jim. That's an incredible guy, James Riley.
Yeah.
That he's an incredible guy, though.
Yeah, well, I gotta
Incredible.
say, seriously,
All right.
kudos to you. I mean, because you were kind of a counterpoint, and that I appreciate that too. So yeah, you're an incredible guy too. I'm gonna just say it. So
Thanks, Jim. I'll talk to you later.
yeah,
Bye bye.
you take care. We'll see you. Let's think, calling from upstate New York. I assume he's that's where he lives. I'm assuming he's there. And yeah, it was just like that. I knew when I was going to talk to Bradley, and I knew what his book about. I thought, well, I knew that Think was from there, so I thought it'd be a pretty good idea to put him on, and I think it was worth the trouble. So anyway, folks, I appreciate you watching. I want to thank James Bradley again, and I want to thank Think again for joining us. So it's Thursday. We don't do Fridays here. On Monday, Don Zero's here, and we're going to do a big time AI Gymcast. A lot of AI stuff going on. So that's on Monday. So you folks have a really good weekend, okay? Good night, Uncle Donnie, wherever you are, and good night to you, wherever you may be. Well, have a nice weekend, everybody. We'll see you on Monday. Take care.